Alright, now we should be streaming to the right broadcast. I was streaming to the wrong test broadcast. Yep. Alright, cool. Alright, we'll wait for some people to come trickle in. If you're in the chat, please drop a note. I'm just gonna give it a few minutes. I've also gotta put some updates on social to let people know that we're live. And let me know if you are watching, if the music to voice delta, I guess is a word for it. Let me know if that is good. Sorry if you're just joining, I am just putting together a social post so we can get some people in here. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're good there. Does this just show up afterwards? Probably. Okay. I think we are good there. So, welcome everyone. If you're watching this later, welcome as well. If you are watching this later and there's any, this is a live Q&A, but we'll see how many people we get in. I might just be talking to no one on the live stream, which is totally fine. Because basically, what I am doing is, first off, there's a lot of people who don't know who I am. I am very small fry, who has been mostly background for a very, very long time. and definitely trying to kind of step out beyond that, because I think there's ways in which I can help the video game industry in a very small but I think important way, and I'm kind of utilizing my connectivity and my I don't know, I guess friendly demeanor and all of these things to build Limit Break. And so what I wanted to do is first introduce myself, right? I wanted to do that. I then wanted to kind of move into kind of thoughts of why Limit Break became a thing, and there's numerous factors as to why, and then beyond that, talking about the network itself and kind of plans, what it means, because I built a Q&A, so if you actually go to the website limitbreaknetwork.com, you can if you click on, when you get to limitbreaknetwork.com and you click on the Limit Break logo, network logo, you will be able to see that I have an FAQ up, and the FAQ kind of touches very kind of bare bones on what Limit Break is, what I want it to be, all of these things, because I wanted to make it as concise as possible. But I've always had a lot to say about it, and I thought this would be a good way to get it out in like an unscripted format, and a format in which I'm like engaging with the audience that I'm hopefully going to build here. And also, in many ways, it'll be like a fun little, time capsule, right? It'll be something where, we can look back and see, in 5 years, like, where it is then compared to now, if it's still around, all of these things. So there's a lot of factors as to why even this video is happening. So that's kind of why this video is happening. Okay. So my name is Tom Caswell. By day, I'm a GameSpot video producer. I've been in digital media for about a decade now in various different ways, shapes, and forms. I've always kind of done a lot of written work, which I still get to do from time to time, but kind of, video production is a little bit harder to try and make a career out of, or at least get work consistently and often, than something compared to like writing, which is literally, you get an in with an editor, several sites, and you can kind of, piece of news comes out, I can fire off, a piece of written work and send it in, and all that. Whereas video production is like, well, it's based on, depending on what the project is, it can be a short film, it can be a digital media project like I make now, it could be many things, and that includes other, a lot of other people, and that include, that's days and days of work rather than something like, a news post, which you write in a couple of hours. So I've always, that was kind of my gateway into all of this. I used to do work for a site called Game Zone. That was my very first kind of gig in the video game digital media industry. And I used to write for that site. If anyone knows who Kate Onde is, he's at Screen Rant now, has been at comicbook.com, and was at Game Zone. He and I are old friends now at this point because of that connection, that connective tissue. So I wrote for that while I was also looking for video production work and things like that. I've done a lot of freelance stuff. I used to work at Gizmodo for a time being, Gizmodo and IO9. Sometimes I would work on some Kotaku videos as well. So that was cool for a while it lasted, and then I got laid off there. And over the years, I've had several kind of stops and starts at places. Full-time paid work is very hard to come by, so a lot of it was like contract gigs for a limited time, and then basically it was like, just kind of contract work, freelancing on and off up until the pandemic. And then in the pandemic, That was I felt really hard on the writing side because video production kind of completely shut down, right? I fell into the writing side. I pitched for a website called Input Mag. It was, Input, and basically they liked my work there, and they needed a social media person, and they thought I was very good at social media, so they just kind of brought me on part-time, and I was there for a couple of years. I expanded into a full-time role, then I expanded into a social media manager role. I tried to do a lot of social video production there, kind of spin that up as well. And then I applied for a job at GameSpot, and in 2022, I started my job at GameSpot, and I've been there ever since. So that is kind of me in a nutshell. That's my career in a nutshell. Fun fact, actually, when I applied for the job at GameSpot, it was back when GameSpot was owned by Red Ventures, and I got hired under Red Ventures, who is no longer the parent company for GameSpot. It's Fandom. And it turns out, like, the previous year in 2021, I had applied for a job as a video producer at CNET. And I guess because I was still looking for video production, primarily video production work versus this kind of social media work. And, I guess I had applied to that, and I had just missed the email, because when I got, like, my offer letter for GameSpot or whatever, I was, like, had to search for the recruiter at Red Ventures' name. And when I searched for her name, it showed this email that she had sent to me, like, over a year prior, asking me if I wanted to interview for this video production position at CNET. And I had completely missed it. So it kind of actually worked out, because I think I'd much rather be at GameSpot doing that, and being with that team. And so it was really funny. It was like I found that out as I was trying to find the paperwork to sign for GameSpot. So that's my job by day. And now we get into talking about, like, what Limit Break Network is and why I have spun it up. And essentially, there are several reasons. The first is I needed a new email. And that was, like, the very first reason. My personal email had just become a giant garbled mess of things over the years, things from my time in college. Like, I've had it for forever. And most of my contacts are through that, but, this stuff from, like, forever ago, I never, like, set up, like, a junk email thing, so, like, a ton of junk mail is there. And it's just become, like, completely unwieldy, especially with this like, election cycle as well. I'm getting so many freaking emails. So I was like, I need a new email address that's just for kind of, important things that aren't necessarily work related. So I was like, I need a new email address. And so there's that. Then I kind of got I'm someone who, like, if I'm not doing something, I find it very hard to, like, sit still. And instead of just being satisfied with my job at GameSpot, I'm like, no, I should be working on personal projects outside of that as well. So there's kind of, like, this internal pressure from me to, like, do something. Then there is the kind of notion that I could lose my job at any time, given how kind of destructive and prone how prone in the past I've been to losing jobs, and being laid off and contracts not being renewed because of just how cutthroat and ruthless the digital media industry is. And so when I got the job at GameSpot, I was like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, like, it's just not going to work out anywhere. I should have, I think, like, good job security here, but it's a company like any other company. Like, there's always that risk, and it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. It doesn't matter how, like, above and beyond you even go. I know firsthand that shit will not save you when it comes to heads need a roll. I've known it firsthand. I've seen it across industries, not even just digital media. Obviously, the gaming industry has lost an immeasurable amount of talent, which obviously plays into a lot of another reason why Limit Break exists. But, you know, there's always going to be a games industry. And this is going to tie into the next thing of why this exists. There's always going to be a game industry, and I want to be a part of it. No matter what, no matter if I have a job in it or not. So I want to create something that kind of still means I have a foothold there. I do have another podcast that I do called Unranked, which if you want to go check it out, you can. But that's something I do with 2 other friends. It's also something that I don't have a ton of control over. And also it is really low key. It's super, like just 2-3 friends chatting, and we just throw it out there every week. And I wanted something a little bit more structured and professional, that was completely my own. I had full control over. And so that's another reason it exists. But, you know, going back to that point of, you know, losing jobs and everything, but there always being this game industry. Like, no matter how many jobs are lost, video games are not going to be a thing that just disappear. There will always be video games in some form being produced. I am certain of that. It's the one thing about the gaming industry that I am certain is that it will always exist, as long as, like, we haven't gone into some kind of freaking nuclear apocalypse, right? And so, but I do think that we are in a tremendous wave of change in the industry. And it's funny, I plan to have this chat today, this Q&A that we're doing right now, and Phil Spencer at Gamescom on Xbox's stream, the very first thing this morning said, he's like, you know, he was talking about the fact that Indiana Jones was coming to PS5, and like what went into that decision, and basically saying, look, we're finding success in this PlayStation method where we sell on PlayStation. You know, there is a lot of kind of fluff and management speak, something that like makes me want to throw up every time I hear it, in what he says in that segment. But he does say, look, the video game industry is changing. It's happening really quickly, and people are like gonna have to kind of ride this wave and like kind of see where this is going. It's going in a very different direction, and it's happening very fast. And those are exactly my sentiments as well. So I wanted to create something that essentially captured that idea. And this is where, you know, I have a lot of ways of describing what Limit Break is, and what Hit the Limit Break is, which is the podcast, the flagship project that is kind of the only thing really at Limit Break at the moment. And Hit the Limit Break is this podcast, and you know, the way I describe it, that I ultimately settled on, was it's about stepping away from the daily news cycle and looking at the bigger picture and kind of trying to put together this puzzle. And instead of just looking at the pieces, we're stepping out and we're looking at the whole puzzle, and we're filling in the pieces, and we're doing that by talking to the people who are making the pieces, right? Like the game developers, the people who are doing PR for gaming, people in digital media, for example, all these hosts, things like that, influencers, things like that. Like, we all make this tapestry that is the video game industry, and it's really big and it's really different in different places. And I think this sea of change is going to affect nearly every facet. And I think we're in it. And I think, 10 years ago, right, 2014, you've got Fortnite is 3 years away. Destiny is just about to launch. We've had like a year of PS4, Xbox One. Xbox One has this disastrous fall from the 360. The gaming industry then is almost unrecognizable compared to the one that we have today. And I think that in another decade, not only is it going to be like simultaneously unrecognizable to what we look at now, but I think it's going to be an even bigger, more drastic change. I think that this is a moment like we are living in a pivotal like couple of years where we're having this kind of flip that affects everything. And so I wanted to create Hit the Limit Break and this kind of banner around Hit the Limit Break that was more like Limit Break Network is this kind of what I describe as a creator collective. So hopefully, eventually, it'll include other projects from other people from different positions all around video games, although I do think there's room for it to branch out on like what it covers. But video games is the focus right now, and I obviously have a lot of friends in the creative of, video game, digital media space who I've already talked to about bringing on projects, some other ideas for podcasts, blogs, videos, things like that. And, because I think it's like, well, if we all work together, right? It's kind of this thing of like, well, if I make something that's kind of successful and you make something that's kind of successful and you make something that's kind of successful, together we can kind of feed into one another and have it be this bohemian sounds really, really, pompous, but like bohemian is the way I feel about it, like kind of scrappy, like with, all right, we all have these great ideas, ideas we believe are important, ideas we're not necessarily concerned about making money on, and we just want to put it out into the world, and like Limit Break is meant to be a place where you can do that. And so that's the umbrella, and the only key things right now are like projects at Limit Break Network you need to feel are important. Like you want to make it because you think that you need to get it out there into the world, and it kind of has to have this connection to gaming and like showing another facet almost of the industry. And so that's Limit Break Network, and then Hit the Limit Break is the podcast, and that is very much trying to tap into this because there's the other element of it is there's so much bullshit out there, right? Like there's so much nonsense. We've got like faux Gamergate 2 happening right now. We are having, the discourse has just kind of degraded to, even aside from the Gamergate stuff, like we're having these repetitive kind of discussions about video games and what they are and what they do and all of these things, and everyone gets caught in it. It's not just like these kind of low IQ morons on the internet who are, they're the stuff that are peddling like racist shit, sexist shit, transphobic shit, like all of that, right? Like there's a huge bucket of that. But then on top of that, there's just like this, I just think gamer discourse is shit. I think we could be having better discussions. I think we could be, that actually improve the gaming industry. And there are a lot of people who are trying to do that, and I do not want to take away from any of that. There's a lot of inspiration as into making Hit the Limit Break a thing. I think of Aftermath, right? The site from ex-Kotaku journalists. There's a lot of shared DNA, in my opinion, between what they're trying to do and what I'm trying to do. They're just tackling it from a more traditional blog style, where they are, they write these stories. What's great about Aftermath, and if you haven't checked out Aftermath's website, you absolutely should. They are latching on to the daily news cycle, right? They write about things that are happen, but they find these great ways to connect them to these bigger conversations in the industry, and it feels like they're building a patchwork. They're building a story about the current state of the industry. And so they're doing it through this kind of old-fashioned blog style, and I'm doing it through a podcast, and I think I'm being a bit more direct about it. I know consciously, I'm sure all of those amazing writers know what they're doing in crafting this story. They know the connective elements, but it's not outspoken in their writing. Their writing is very focused on the news nugget and then stepping back and connecting to it. And I guess like I'm kind of doing it in reverse, right? Like I'm kind of starting from out here and moving in. And so that's that. With Hit the Limit Break is just trying to really steer the conversation in a much better direction, a better quality of conversation, because this change is happening, and I feel like there's so much bullshit distracting from the change that like we're not paying enough attention and like trying to highlight attention to these changing winds. And all of this sounds like so unspecific, so I'm gonna get more specific about what I mean. So it's all facets of gaming, right, where this change is occurring. You have the pandemic fallout, right, and companies coming to this realization that big budget AAA games are not going to save you financially. IP licensing is not going to save you financially. They are not the easy wins and guarantees that they used to be. And so studios are finding themselves in a lot of hot water. This is also connected to the fact of like studios are businesses that need to grow every year, and they can't just be happy with breaking even or making a slight profit. It has to be a bigger profit than the year before. So there is a discussion to be had about how this is just like a side effect of corporate structure in America, or across the world even, right? It's not just in the States, but obviously states are a market leader for that kind of approach to business. So there's that element of it, but there's also the fallout of there was this tremendous spike in growth during COVID, and then that kind of returned immediately back to normal the moment people were going back outside again, and because the gaming industry turns really slow, although it does, like I said, it does feel fast right now, but these projects are taking longer and longer to make, so they're baked in decisions from 5 years ago that they can't quickly undo. There's a reason why a lot of these smaller indie-ish games feel fresh, is because they're made more recently, they're started more recently, so they're based on more recent ideas, where there are games that feel so stuck in the past, and it's because they literally were created in the past. And that's becoming a bigger and bigger problem as AAA development takes longer and longer. And so, that ties into that thing of games taking much longer. And now studios are trying to, I would say every major studio is looking at that as a major problem, and are starting to, on a dime, go from okay, we need to immediately start making smaller games. We need to immediately start fixing it so games take 3 years like they used to take, compared to 5-6 years, things like that. That is a discussion that is happening, I guarantee you, at most studios. The majority of studios are having that discussion for sure. And you saw that in the conversation I had with oh God, who was it? Fergus at Obsidian. It's very clear that him and the team at Obsidian were ahead of the curve on that. And that's why I think Obsidian's going to be okay in the long run, is because they had been working on things like Grounded since before the pandemic. They had been working on Pentiment, and they've got Avowed in the can, and like Fergus said, he's like, we do what the tools allow us to do, and we don't try and kind of break it. We don't try and change things. We just kind of go with the flow, and we kind of let ourselves be at the mercy, in a lot of ways, I think, of Unreal Engine 5, which is what they develop with. And they have to figure out how to work in those parameters, but it means that they can get a project up much faster and with far fewer people, rather than having to, and I don't think Obsidian's games are, I think Obsidian, ultimately is going to come out on top here, but there's a lot of games that kind of shoot for the moon, right? They kind of shoot to be the next revolutionary thing. Cyberpunk was going to be the next fucking revolutionary thing ever. Cyberpunk may be a bad example because it did sell millions of copies, it sold very, very well, but there are a lot of games that don't, that try and do something like that, where they try and we are going to be the defining RPG experience, and they fall flat, and they have a ton of trouble in development. And that's where a lot of the problems, I think, lie. And so Obsidian, clearly a studio that I think is like ahead of the curve on this, of being smart about how they use resources and things like that. And more studios are going to do that. And so that's part of the change. We have just more diversity in the gaming industry, which is awesome, and not something that needs to be denigrated, and not something that needs to be, turned away from. It is just almost a fact of nature that it was going to happen. Like literally, like statistically, if you really want to get into the weird, like talk about the science of it all, that there's no stopping it becoming more diverse. Like that's the thing, is like, even if you have a problem with it, surely you understand the futility of what you're trying to do. That's something that like baffles me as well. Like, yes, absolutely, don't be a piece of shit. But like surely like you should be smart enough to know that like there's no going back. Like that's not how any of this works. It's not how existence works. It all, life finds a way. Like it always works out this way. So give up, because it's a fucking pointless fight, and there's no fucking need to like be a piece of shit on the internet about it, because you are a part of, you've been told your whole life, you've been caught in this like whole fucking malaise of thought that has just infested your fucking brain, and it's a real fucking problem, and it fucking sucks, and you need to get the fuck out of it. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, my brain is made of jello, like you need to figure out a way to like fix that. So that's another element of it, is not only is the industry becoming more diverse by the day, but the types of games that are coming out are becoming more diverse, and a massive response to that has been there's so much bullshit floating about from assholes on the internet. And so that, like, we're at a pivotal point there where it's like, okay, is discourse going to regress, or are we going to try and improve it and have better conversations? And that's why, again, kind of why this exists. So there's changes there. Labor is a huge one, right? So unionizing in development studios and things like that. The strike happening with SAG for voice actors. We're seeing these wall-to-wall unions now in the West, not just small development teams. Bethesda Game Studios, pretty much the whole studio has now become unionized. And again, this is connected to things that are outside of the industry, of just an increased interest in labor, in unionizing in America after kind of a decade, half a century to a century's worth of capital trying to stomp out organized labor. And again, some of the there's kind of like a natural cycle to all of this, and right now we're in a space where organized labor is rapidly breaking down kind of the walls of the gaming industry, and I think that is only going to increase as well. So that's another element there. We have obviously, and this has been happening for a while before now, right? It's not necessarily a new thing, but it's something that we're seeing this flip, and kind of the blatant transparency of it is this kind of out with the old way of journalism and in with the new, which it has taken the form of streamers and influencers and things like that. And that, I think, is only going to... I don't necessarily think that element of it is particularly one that I'm interested in covering, because it is kind of old at this point, and it's not happening in this kind of rapid way, right? It's not happening as quickly as some of these other things. Like, it's very apparent now that, streamers and influencers kind of rule the roost when it comes to mind share of people that engage in video game digital media. And I don't necessarily think there's inherently anything wrong with that. It makes sense as to why it is. But I think that has become a part of why we are in these cyclical discussions I also think it is has obviously a lot to do with problematic discourse, and it also kind of distracts from the change, right? Like it takes away like, you know, Ninja, Shroud, these big names are not, they're just playing the games, right? And that they are hyper fixated in the discourse of the day, because the discourse of their day feeds their business. The daily news cycle, what is the flavor of the moment, that feeds into their business. They build off of that, and this network, unfortunately, in a way has a lot going against it, because that's not what we're trying to do here at all. I'm not interested at all in capitalizing on uninteresting kind of discussion, and I want to make something that is like, yeah, that's great, that's fine, but like, get that bullshit away from me. Let's talk about the shit that's actually real and actually fucking matters and is going to continue to be something that we should talk about, versus like whatever the in the day bullshit it is, right? So that's part of why I wanted to create this, and that's why there's like a lot of uphill battle. And I knew that the Fergus interview would be good, and I knew that it would be interesting. And I'm trying to combat like the fact that this network and the show is not going to just try and jump into cheap discourse and get rage bait and all that jazz, because I want to combat that by making it essential. Like, you have to watch. I want it to be something where it's like, if you want to be caught on what's going on in the game industry, you have to listen to Limit Break, in a way that like something like Jason Schreier, when Jason Schreier drops a new report on a studio, it's something that the whole industry pays attention to, because it has to, because he is an exceptional journalist who gets to the nugget of information that no one else can get to. And so you have to, if you're interested even partially in the video game industry, when Schreier does his reports, you have to read them, or you have to find the information from them at some other outlet that's regurgitated that information. And I'm not saying that this, or myself, or Limit Break, or whatever is on Jason's level, but I'm aiming for kind of that kind of essential nature. And I think that I was on the money with the first episode, because 5,000 views, even though, I have a bit of influence, I can share it, people are going to share it that I know that have a bigger influence. Even with that, the data actually showed very quickly that was not what was driving views, and it was things like browse features and other things where people are just organically finding it. Well, organic in the sense that the algorithm is feeding it to them, but they were organically finding it. And 5,000 views on the first video of a new channel, regardless of how much influence you have, is like a big fucking deal, and like a very good performance in my eyes of that chat. And it kind of just confirmed for me that chat was going to be something that people felt they had to check it out. If they were at all interested in Xbox or Obsidian or RPGs, or just like in game development in general, they had to watch that. And that is what I'm striving to go for every chat. And so there's that. And then the last thing I wanted to say before we wrap up was that, let me see, we were chatting about the essential aspect, we were chatting about the streamers and the discourse and all of that. I guess I just wanted to say, I want this to be something that, I wanted to talk about the fact that, like, the future, I guess. The future being that I think, I really want to kind of wait and see before making any decisions about like expanding Hit the Limit Break podcast or adding a new show or who I'm bringing on until we've gotten a couple of things under our belt. But I think the response I've seen, particularly on YouTube, I think we can really cultivate like a good audience here. I built I have there's a Twitter handle for Limit Break, there's an Instagram, a Threads, there's a TikTok, and I'm still going to utilize those spaces, but I think I'm primarily going to try and utilize the YouTube like community feature and like actually build the community here on YouTube. I wish YouTube had some kind of like Discord thing that would be really good, because like I think I'd much rather build like a kind of like forum, like a Discord, channel on YouTube, just to kind of keep it all under one roof, because I think that people very quickly have gravitated toward this, specifically here on YouTube. And so there's going to be a lot of kind of wait and see there. But that's my intention, is to really, really capitalize and utilize this platform. And so, yeah, that's kind of it for now. I would love to field any questions from anyone that comes along this video. Please go check out the Fergus interview if you haven't already. Leave a question in the comments if you have a question about anything. If you want to share your thoughts on what you thought I had to say just now, that would also be great. I would love to hear what some people in the industry that you think would be good for this show, who you think might fit everything that I've brought up so far. Hopefully like I said at the top, we're looking back on this in a couple of years, and this has grown and things have dramatically changed. And where is the industry going to be in a couple of years? It's going to be interesting to watch this back, I think. So we shall see. Maybe the whole thing will collapse in on itself, and that's totally something that I'm willing to take, because I know how much work it's going to take to kind of upkeep this, and that just might not be feasible. Or it might just be the same thing, where we're just having this kind of bi-weekly Hit the Limit Break podcast, and that's it. And that's also fine, because I want it, like I said, I think it's important. And if it doesn't grow, if it just finds like little pockets of people every time, like the first episode did, that's totally fine, because like it's important. Like I just think it's important, and I think that we need more of it. So those are all my thoughts on all of that. If you have any questions, like I said, drop them in the chat. And hopefully maybe we can do another Q&A in the future. Next week, the week of the 26th, maybe it'll launch on Tuesday, like actually have them launch every Tuesday. It might get pushed to Wednesday because we are doing it Monday night. But my next chat is with Rit Nelson. His handle is @RitNelson. His name is Zalavia Nelson. He has a studio called Strange Scaffold that is very interesting, has made a ton of really interesting games, and has a unique approach to game development. And so we're going to talk about that with him. We're going to talk about his games. We're going to talk about his thoughts on the industry and all of that. Very much like the discussion we had with Fergus. So look forward to that. That'll be next week, the week of August 26th, 2024. Thank you guys for now. Hope you have a great night, day, whenever you're watching this. And like I said, leave a comment. We'll see you next time.